This was reportedly one of the biggest budget movies ever made in Taiwan. It brought together a powerhouse cast, and plenty of viewers still consider it a classic of Chinese language horror. It was also written by the same screenwriter behind Time's Double Vision, and some fans even think this movie is better. The film received 5 Golden Horse Award nominations and holds a 7.2 rating on Douban. This one stays intense from beginning to end. So if you scare easily, you might want to watch it with someone beside you. A Japanese man named Hashimoto hires a photographer and pays him a small fortune. He only wants the photographer to do one thing: walk into an empty room and take a picture. But he isn't there to photograph the room. He's there to photograph a ghost. Before the photographer goes inside, Hashimoto gives him some specially made film. According to Hashimoto, it's the only kind that can capture a ghost on camera. The photographer doesn't believe in ghosts at all. As far as he's concerned, this is basically free money. He walks into the room, sets up his camera, and aims it at an empty corner. But when the photo develops, a young boy appears in the corner that was completely empty just seconds earlier. Terrified, the photographer slowly turns around, and sure enough, a blurry figure is crouching against the wall. The next second, the boy rises to his feet and starts walking toward him. Before the photographer can escape, he suddenly drops to the floor and dies on the spot. The next day, Hashimoto arrives at the apartment with his research team. They were the ones who hired the photographer, and they've been running this entire experiment from the start. Hashimoto works with an anti-gravity research team that has created a special material called Menger sponge. This material can capture electromagnetic waves and absorb different kinds of energy. The team used Menger sponge to trap the boy's ghost inside the room. Hashimoto believes ghosts aren't just imaginary figures. He thinks they're a special form of electromagnetic energy. And if that energy can be controlled, Menger sponge could break free from the limits of gravity. To prove his theory, Hashimoto walks upside down across the ceiling right in front of his boss. After seeing the experiment work, the boss immediately changes his attitude. But before the research can continue, they need to find out who the boy is and why his ghost has stayed around for so long. So Hashimoto uses his connections to bring a detective named Yi Dong onto the team. Yi Dong has incredibly sharp eyesight. He can recognize faces from far away, and he also knows how to read lips. Once Yi Dong enters the lab, Hashimoto tells him to spray a liquid made from Menger sponge directly into his eyes. Yi Dong does it, and just like that, he can see the ghost of a young boy crouching in the corner. A huge glass wall divides the room, and the door is completely coated in Menger sponge. Every afternoon at exactly 4:30, the boy gets up and walks toward the exit, but he seems terrified of the material covering the door, so he never gets close enough to leave. The boy doesn't react to videos, voices, or anything happening around him. Sometimes he opens his mouth and speaks, but the researchers can't hear a single word. That's why Hashimoto brought Yi Dong here. He wants Yi Dong to read the boy's lips, find out who he is, and figure out why he's still here. Yi Dong starts by examining the photographer's body. Inside the man's chest, he finds a clear handprint from a child pressed into the heart. Using the photos from the scene, Yi Dong quickly pieces together what happened. After seeing the boy in the picture, the photographer turned around and made eye contact with him. The moment the boy realized he could be seen, he reached straight into the man's chest and grabbed his heart. So this ghost isn't harmless. Anyone who sees him and makes direct contact could become his next victim. At the same time, a researcher named Su Yuan decides he wants the ghost for himself. He sprays Menger sponge all over a newspaper, planning to secretly take the boy away and claim the discovery as his own. But Hashimoto catches him. To teach him a lesson, he locks Su Yuan inside the room with the ghost. Su Yuan still has no idea how much danger he's in. Behind him, the boy is already crawling closer. From outside the room, Yi Dong desperately warns him not to turn around. But Su Yuan can't resist. The moment their eyes meet, a thin, transparent thread suddenly appears between them. The boy lunges forward and grabs Su Yuan by the throat. Yi Dong rushes inside and drags him out, but it's already too late. Su Yuan has stopped breathing. Even stranger, the moment his spirit leaves his body, it quickly fades away. Hashimoto explains that an ordinary person's soul can only remain as energy for a very short time. But this boy has been here for years. To find out why, they need to let him out and see where he tries to go every afternoon. At 4:30, the researchers open the door. The boy leaves the apartment and walks alone to an abandoned school. He enters a classroom, sits in his old seat, and starts reading just like he did when he was alive. But a few moments later, he suddenly runs into the hallway. Large sores break out across his face, and his body begins shaking violently from the pain. Then he throws himself from the upper floor. Yi Dong races downstairs, only to find the boy already standing again. Even the wound on his head heals within seconds. The boy then walks to the area where parents used to pick up their children. He keeps repeating the same sentence. By reading his lips, Ye Dong realizes what he's saying. "Mom, the daylilies are blooming." After saying this, the boy begins to cry. Then he crouches beside the road, waiting to be picked up just like he did when he was alive. Right then, a drunk man walks over and prepares to urinate in front of him. The boy seems to get angry and slowly reaches out his hand. Yi Dong quickly coats a bullet with Menger's sponge liquid and fires at the boy. The bullet passes through the ghost and hits an innocent bystander nearby, but the gunshot gets the boy's attention. He turns around and walks straight toward Yi Dong. Yi Dong immediately lowers his head, doing everything he can to avoid eye contact. The boy stands in front of him for a moment, and just as Yi Dong expected, he doesn't attack. Patrolling officers soon arrive and pin Ye Dong to the ground. That's when Ye Dong notices a long, transparent thread attached to the boy's foot. The thread stretches far into the distance. The boy eventually returns to the apartment and crouches in the same corner again. As Hashimoto watches him, he says this is the most perfect form of life. There's no aging, no sickness, and no death. There's no physical pain and none of the responsibilities that come with being alive. The next day, Hashimoto gets Ye Dong released from the police station. Using old school records, they finally identify the boy as Chen Yaoshi. Before his death, Yaoshi suffered from severe tumors throughout his body. His classmates constantly bullied and mocked him, and in the end, he jumped from the school building. His mother, Zheng Chun, was there when it happened, but instead of trying to save him, she attempted to strangle him while he was still alive. A teacher arrived just in time, temporarily saving the boy's life. But after Yaoshi was taken to the hospital, Zheng Chun secretly took him away. From that day on, both mother and son disappeared without a trace. Some people believed Zheng Chun eventually killed Yaoshi. Others claimed she took him into the mountains to grow flowers. Then Ye Dong remembers the sentence Yaoshi kept repeating, "Mom, the daylilies are blooming." After looking into it, the team discovers there's only one place near Taipei with a huge field of daylilies. They head to the flower field and find Yaoshi's body buried underground. There are clear strangulation marks around his neck. But even after all these years, his body hasn't decayed. It turns out the flower field is right beside a synchrotron radiation center. A massive electron accelerator coil is buried underground. Whenever the coil operates, the magnetic field continuously feeds energy into Yaoshi's body. That energy not only preserved his corpse, but also kept his spirit from disappearing. At first, everyone assumes Yaoshi stayed in this world because his mother killed him, leaving him filled with hatred. But Ye Dong soon realizes the truth isn't that simple. He follows the transparent thread attached to Yaoshi's foot and eventually reaches a clinic. The other end of the thread is connected to Yaoshi's mother, Zheng Chun. At that moment, Zheng Chun is lying on a hospital bed, shaking uncontrollably. The doctors do everything they can, but she eventually stops breathing. A doctor tells Ye Dong that Zheng Chun was once buried under rubble for 15 days after an earthquake in Taipei. Strangely, there were constant pressure marks on her chest. It looked like someone had been performing chest compressions in the darkness, keeping her alive the entire time. Meanwhile, Hashimoto's boss has completely run out of patience. He sends a group of men to seize the entire research project by force. With no other choice, the researchers activate their equipment and pull Yaoxi into the Menger sponge. Yaoshi seems to sense the danger and suddenly lets out a piercing scream. Several transparent threads shoot from his body and connect to the people in the room. One of them even connects to Ye Dong's girlfriend, Xiao Ya. who has come looking for him. By the time the boss's men arrive, Hashimoto has already escaped with the Menger sponge containing Yaoxi. Just as Yidong gets the news, Zheng Chun's newly released spirit senses that her son is in danger. Her ghost crawls out of her body and races out of the clinic. Following the threads, Zheng Chun begins attacking everyone connected to Yaoxi. One member of the research team after another is killed. While searching for Zheng Chun, Ye Dong unexpectedly runs into Hashimoto. But something is different. Hashimoto, who once needed crutches to walk, is now moving around normally. Using Menger sponge, he has truly mastered anti-gravity technology. He can even walk upside down across the ceiling. Hashimoto tells Ye Dong that he has always been able to see the threads. He believes they're created by the hatred ghosts leave behind when they die. Anyone connected by one of those threads becomes a target for the ghost. And Hashimoto himself has already been consumed by hatred. Because of his disability, his boss has humiliated him for years. Every time the man called him a cripple, Hashimoto clicked a small counter in his hand. The number has now reached 744. Hashimoto is convinced that if he dies with enough hatred inside him, he can become a ghost, just like Yaoxi. Before leaving, he tells Ye Dong that a thread has also appeared on Xiaoya. The moment Ye Dong realizes she's in danger, he races to find her. By then, Zheng Cheng is already standing beside Xiaoya, preparing to reach into her chest. Ye Dong arrives just in time and fires bullets coated in Menger sponge liquid. The bullets temporarily force Zheng Chun back. Then Ye Dong gets into his car and deliberately draws her away from Xiaoya. On the way, he contacts Hashimoto and tells him to release Yaoxi immediately. As long as Yaoxi remains trapped, Zheng Chun will keep following the threads and killing more people. But Hashimoto doesn't care. He takes Yaoxi to the daylily field and releases his spirit. Then Hashimoto takes his own life. He believes his hatred will turn him into a ghost, allowing him to see what lies beyond death. But he's wrong. Zheng Chun soon catches up with Ye Dong at a subway station. She reaches into his chest and grabs his heart. Just as Ye Dong is about to die, Yaoxi suddenly appears. He also reaches into Ye Dong's chest, but instead of killing him, Yaoxi begins pressing his heart. Ye Dong's heart starts beating again, and he miraculously comes back to life. At last, Yaoxi is reunited with his mother. And only then does everyone realize that Hashimoto had been wrong from the very beginning. Yaoxi never stayed behind because he hated his mother. Back then, Zheng Chun had watched her son suffer from unbearable pain for years. She couldn't stand seeing him suffer any longer, so she ended his life with her own hands. She took all the blame on herself and wept beside her son's body. What Yaoxi couldn't let go of wasn't the fact that his mother had killed him. It was his love for her and his fear of leaving her alone. When Zheng Chun was trapped under the rubble after the earthquake, Yaoxi was the one who kept pressing her heart. He kept her alive for a full 15 days. The transparent thread connecting the mother and son was never a curse created by hatred. It was a love that even death could never break.